Hi Michael, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us. Maybe you could kick off with a brief intro to your new film, Encounter.
So Encounter is about a father who's trying to save his two children from a mysterious threat, and he goes on the run with them to try and get to a place of safety. And as they're on the road, they encounter different threats, and it tests their relationship, but it also brings them together in different ways. And it's really a story about two kids that are having to leave their childhood behind, and about Riz's character ultimately confronting this seemingly unstoppable enemy.
And where did you get the inspiration for this story, and why was it this film that you wanted to make in the follow-up to Beast?
So it's a script that had been around for a few years that has always had a lot of love. People always liked the story. It never quite came together as a film. Yeah, I read it and I immediately connected to the father-son dynamic. I grew up with a younger brother, for much of my childhood a single father, and when we were similar ages to the characters in the film, we encountered a crisis as a family, or like a series of crises, and the three of us had to sort of navigate through that and help each other. I saw an opportunity to tell that story that had a lot of poignancy for me, but put it on a very large canvas, and that combination is always really rare, to do something personal in a big genre space. And so yeah, I read it and I pitched to the writer Joe Barton and the producers what I wanted to do, and they thought that was exciting, so I went with it. So it's a kind of it's a more personal film than my debut, but obviously it's set in the States and it's a bigger budget and it's more ambitious, so I was able to keep hold of some of my identity as I stepped up.
And probably one of the first questions really should have been about Riz Ahmed. I mean, what an incredible actor, and also someone whose star seems just continuing to be on the rise. Why did you want him for the role, and what do you think that makes him stand out so much as one of the best British actors we have at the moment?
I think he's really versatile, not just in the different types of performances that he does, but even within a singular performance, he really keeps you on the edge of his seat about what his character's going to do. There's a very unpredictable quality, and I think that's because as an actor, his process is to be very alive in the moment. He does a lot of research, a lot of prep. Like in this film, he completely changed his physique, obviously his voice, he speaks in a very different way. He spent a lot of time researching with Marines, doing a lot of deep research into the background of the character. But as soon as you say action, he's just very alive to what's going to happen in front of him. He doesn't come to set with predetermined ideas, he wants to find it in the moment. So that just makes him really electric on screen, you can see that. And I'd just seen a few performances, I mean, I've always been a fan of his work, but I think it was when I saw Sound of Metal, and just not too long before that, A Night Of, and I just thought, wow, the same guy can do these two very different roles, and he really broke my heart in The Sound of Metal. I loved that film and his performance in it, and so he had that warmth and that vulnerability, as well as that kind of tough edge that he has, and it just seemed like a really exciting cocktail for the character.
And what about the rest of your cast, and how did they all work together with Riz as well?
Casting Octavia was one of those very lucky casting processes that rarely happens, where I wrote the part for her, which is a really dangerous thing to do because you never get the first person you're trying to cast. And I wrote her a letter saying that, look, you have to do this part because I've written it for you and I can't think of the character outside of hearing your voice. She read it and we spoke a few days later and she was on board. So that was just pure luck, that the movie gods was looking kindly down upon us. And then with the kids, it was a much longer journey of trying to find two young actors. I didn't mind whether they'd acted before, whether they're total newcomers, so we got audition tapes from all around the States, did Zoom auditions with a bunch of kids, and just slowly over like a 6 to 8 month period just whittled it down further and further. And I was trying to look for two young actors that closely resembled the characters on screen, so they didn't feel burdened about having to play something too different, than act too differently than they would in a similar situation. And you always had that to lean back onto, just to ground it in some kind of reality. And yeah, they're two kids that are kind of wise beyond their years. They come to the set with a similar generous spirit that Riz did, and it was quite beautiful to see the three of them just create this family bond together.
And you kind of cut across genres in some way, you kind of got a bit of science fiction going on there, but then there's also kind of like a deeply human story beneath it all. So, how did you want the film to look and feel, and where do you think it sits within a genre?
We didn't want it to feel like the film was changing genres every 15 minutes. So the way we grounded it was to always relate the genre to the point of view of the character. Like anytime we were hesitating about what kind of decision to make, like me and my DP or my composer or my editor, we were always asking like, well, what is Riz's character going through at this moment? Or what is his son Jay going through at this moment? And that became the kind of the test for what kind of decision we'd make. And it stopped us from ever making a kind of a pastiche of different genres. And so with the score, for instance, we don't use certain instruments for one section and another for another section. The same instruments are used from the very opening throughout to the very end, and it kind of using that approach and defining a film language that could cut across the whole film helped sort of bind it together. Always every beat in the story, I'm just trying to be attuned to what the character is going through, and sometimes that means being really modest and unfussy with the camera and being very patient and just observing them, and sometimes it means going into their point of view and using sound design to get inside their head. It's really just a beat by beat moment of just asking, are we close to what the character is experiencing? And then in terms of genre, I don't like to do it because in some ways we're trying to defy genre conventions with the film and invite the audience to make an assessment on Riz's character, because a lot of the film is a journey about who this guy really is and what's motivating him. And I'd be ruining it if I gave my take on what genre they might be in at different moments.
And what do you ultimately hope people will take away? And do you think, films are hitting slightly different right now, considering, the 18 months we've just been through, even just anything that's like kind of focusing on like family and that feeling of having to, the impending danger, maybe it's hit different than it might have been if it had been before the pandemic.
Yeah, the script was obviously developed before COVID happened for a number of years, but there was some kind of strange symmetry when we were making the film where we saw a lot of correlations to the world we were living in, and something that we were all experiencing. There is this invisible threat around us that is affecting us, and it's affecting our family, and it's putting a lot of pressure on everyone in terms of their mental health. So yeah, I just think it made it those themes just somehow seem more resonant now than if we'd made it a few years ago. I think we've all gone through this and we've come out the other end, not through it, but we've come out at least this stage really valuing the people that are close to us. It's certainly thrown into relief, how meaningful those very close bonds are to us. And we all felt that when we were making the film. And the film was also a kind of portrait of America in late 2020 when it kind of felt like it was on the precipice of some apocalyptic disaster. We had crazy wildfires and record heat temperatures, and there was civil unrest. The country was so divided, and we realized there was a lot of parallels in the script that was also playing out in real life. And we wanted to embrace those themes into the story, but not be didactic or heavy-handed in the way that we commented on them. We wanted to do it with a light touch, that an audience could, if they were looking for those questions and that exploration, they'd see it in the film, but it also wasn't going to eclipse the father-son story.
Mm-hmm. And how does it feel to have your film here at LFF? And for people to be able to finally watch it on the big screen rather than on their laptops?
Yeah, LFF's great because I've come to the festival since moving to London when I went to film school, and since then I've got a pass and I've watched 5 films a day for whatever it is, 10 days, and I've had different shorts play at the festival, and I had my first film play here, and it's always felt like a homecoming because I know so many friends that have come to see the film, and you can also just feel like central London is alive with film lovers. And we've all been at home for a year and a half, not going to the cinema. For a lot of people, this is their first experience going out, seeing movies, passionately debating films, telling the person next to you about why they must go and see some movie that's had a profound effect on them. And I feel it's really electric, having that very collective feeling as opposed to being very atomized from each other and more having that feeling independently. It's really invigorating, that energy that a festival brings, especially now where a lot of us haven't experienced it for some time.
And just finally, were you taken aback by the incredible reception you had to Beast, and obviously the careers of people like Johnny Flynn, Jessie Buckley in particular, post your film, and then also do you know what you'll do next, and would you see a common thread between the two films you've done and what you might do next?
Well, we didn't think about what the reaction would be when we were making these. We just had such a, it felt like it was such a challenge, just to make the film. It's my first film. It was Jesse's first film. It's quite ambitious for the budget we could get. And so, yeah, it was really gratifying when that came out and we saw that it connected with people. And I think I knew maybe the first week in that Jesse had something very unique, especially for an actor that hadn't been in a film before. So I maybe had a sense that she was going to really pop in some way. But we didn't really think beyond, we were just trying to get through like day by day, the shoot, week by week. And then in terms of what I'm going to do next, I'm not developing a couple of things. I'm not sure what's going to be the next thing because it's so hard to predict what comes together. It's so contingent on which actor you go with and when they're available and where the money comes from, and you can't control that. It's up to the movie gods. So we'll see. But I feel like it will have, similar to Beast and Encounter, one foot in a sort of complex character study and one foot in some sort of propulsive genre engine. Something about that fusion just seems really compelling to me.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to see what you do next, but enjoy this film at the festival here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.